Hello and welcome to Exchange Traded People. I'm your host, Mike O'Riordan, and today's guest is Joe Higgins, Managing Director at ACA Foreside. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Good to see you, and thanks for having me.
Cool. So just as we were talking off, Mike, Joe, the way I kind of like to split this is a little bit about you, and then so people get to know who you are in case they don't know you, for all those living under a rock. And then a little bit about your thoughts on the industry and where it is today, because you sit in a pretty unique seat, so have a good view of what's going on. So I'm going to dive straight in, and the first up question I have is, when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you grew up? It certainly wasn't this what you're doing now, I'm sure. At least I hope it's not.
Yeah, it's a good question. And actually, it's, when you're in kindergarten or in grade school, they didn't have that ETF option when you're sort of putting the sticker up there. As a kid, I played a lot of basketball. So I aspired to be in the NBA. That's what I wanted to do.
Nice.
But I clearly stopped growing, and I decided that maybe that wasn't the journey for me. Realistically, when I looked at just careers generally, I knew I wanted to be in the investment space. I just didn't know in what role or how, but that had always been in the back of my mind.
Right. And where did the kind of feeling come from that I want to be in the investment space?
Yeah, I had family in the investment space. My father, uncles had worked there. So I grew up around it, and I knew that was the industry I really liked. I just, again, not doing what they were doing, but figuring it out. Maybe if ETFs were an option, that would have been, again, where I put the pin.
Gotcha. So basketball didn't work out, unfortunately. But you did get into investment, so congratulations for that. But how, can you walk us through, your kind of first job in the industry into the kind of seat where you are today?
Yeah, and I'll go quickly through the primary part and then into ETFs, which is probably more interesting. But like everybody else, I sat on a sales desk at a bank, and just doing just the grunt work that nobody wants to do. But really, what got me into more kind of the investment space, I worked at an asset manager at a multifamily office, and there I was more like investor relations associate type role. But that company was involved in private equity investments, real estate investments, stock selecting, things of that nature. And what I did was a lot of the work where you can communicate with clients, but you can also take that information, cull it down to something easy to digest, and then being able to have it readily available for our clients. That company was ultimately sold. I lost my job. I was living in Portland, Maine at the time, where I'm still actually today. And at that point, it was really trying to find the next job. And that's when you just have to hustle. This is 15 years ago. So the financial collapse had already happened. Things were kind of moving again.
Yeah.
I randomly uploaded my resume to a company called Foreside Financial. And I had no idea what that company did at the time. But my resume ended up on the desk of the president at the time, who was working there. And they ultimately were hit with the regulator. The regulator for Foreside said, you really as Foreside need to conduct more diligence and have an understanding of the private fund managers that you guys are servicing. And so ultimately I ended up working there and getting a job there, because that's the background I had. I was able to work with private fund managers and understand what that looked like. So that was my first job into Foreside, which ultimately parlayed, but I'll pause there, which ultimately parlayed into the ETF industry.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So you've been you've been in the industry for a long time now. When you sit here and kind of reflect, what are the kind of learnings that you've kind of taken from your career, and what advice would you give your younger self now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, taking that, and actually probably taking that story even further, when I was at Foreside for a couple of years, there was an area that was this underserved area from a relationship perspective called the ETF group, which was sort of like the dark hallway within probably everybody's firm at the time, from a servicing perspective. And I took a leap. They needed relationship. I took a leap there, and they needed relationship management. I became their first client development relationship manager of our ETF clients. And so if you look at that, again, you look back at your journey, it's taking opportunities, it's looking at the risk that might be there, because I had no idea how ETFs were serviced at the time. I knew what they were, obviously, from an investment standpoint. But that, of course, was probably one of the things where, looking back at my younger self, just proud that you just have to take a leap of faith and a risk just to jump into an industry that you might not realize. And luckily, it was the right choice, and it's been a great journey so far.
Yeah, yeah. One of the observations I have, like with kind of my recruiting hat on, is that especially like younger people now, they're very, very risk averse when it comes to like looking at roles and opportunities. They don't really want to take a leap of faith. They always kind of go for the safe option, which is a shame, because they're missing out on a lot and ultimately a lot of learning experiences. So just it is what it is, I suppose. Everyone's different.
Yeah, they're missing out. Not only are they missing out, but the industry is missing out, because we don't know who we're not getting in the industry if they're not going to take that leap of faith. So absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. If there was one improvement you could make to yourself now, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a good one. I would probably say things have moved so quickly, especially in the ETF industry over the last 15 years that I've been involved in. One of the things that I'm trying to do that I could improve on is pausing and reflecting and just making sure you sort of scan what's going on in your life, what's going on in your career, what's going on in the industry, is one thing I definitely need to improve upon. It's been such a great journey, but when you blink, there's 3 years go by, and then another 3 years, and another 3 years. So one of the things that I'm trying to do too is just pause. And I think it's beneficial, obviously, from a personal standpoint, but also from the industry, just realizing what's going on.
That's hard. Like when you're on the hamster wheel and it's spinning like crazy, it's very hard to jump off and just take that moment of reflection, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So you've been at Foreside now, ACA Foreside for a long time. For listeners who maybe are not that familiar with the company, can you explain what Foreside do? Sure.
So I'll talk about Foreside as a division, and then it's now part of ACA. So I'll also talk a little bit about ACA and how we support our clients. So Foreside really is a company that provides a critical vendor role, and I'll speak specifically to ETFs, for ETF managers that want to launch ETFs and service on an ongoing basis. So when you look at launching an ETF, and a lot of people in the industry know this, but if you don't know this, if you're looking at launching an ETF, you have critical vendors that need to be attached to the ETF structure in order for it to launch and operate. The ones that are recognizable are the custodian, law firm, auditor, administrator, exchange. But you also have to have a regulated entity that needs to be attached to this ETF trust structure called the statutory distributor or principal underwriter. And that broker-dealer entity is what we own and operate, so our clients don't have to create one. And then we are essentially a part of the structure. And what we do specifically is enable compliant distribution. It's probably the easiest way to think about it. So if you go back earlier in my career, when I jumped over to the ETF side, I was sitting there at a pocket of clients, small clients at that point, and I was surrounded by the services of ETF operations. So that's the team that was reviewing and approving AP orders, the legal team that was involved with the authorized participant AP contracts, the marketing review team that was reviewing and approving our clients' marketing material, and then the registration team for the team that's holding these FINRA licenses like Series 7s, and they're overseeing these sales individuals who are promoting the ETFs. So all of that service is what we do at ACA Foreside, so our clients don't have to do it themselves. And so that's valuable right there.
Got it. So you guys are like the gatekeepers of the ETF industry now.
I like to say we do filter quite a bit, and we do so. We keep our clients in good graces. I also joke that somebody has to do it, and nobody wants to.
Yeah.
But we clearly love it, and I think it's good, and it speaks to the ecosystem as well, because although we love what we do, we're not a custodian and we're
Yeah.
not a law firm, but we all get along, and that really benefits our clients.
Yeah.
Now, and I'll just quickly highlight ACA because it's important.
Yep.
Is that ACA on the surface is looked at as the gold standard elite firm that provides compliance consulting, technology, and managed services to the asset management industry. What was interesting about Foreside when we folded into ACA is I had to go out there and explain who ACA was.
Yeah.
But ironically, it turned out everybody already used ACA. So it was just one of those natural kind of synergies. ACA didn't provide what we provided. So they really, and we now really as an organization really do provide great services, and clients really rely on ACA quite a bit.
Yeah.
I've never seen before actually within our own ecosystem.
Yeah, no, definitely. You've been there like for what, coming up to 15 years now or something. So like what's kept you there for so long?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's everything's ever evolving. And I think the role, people say you don't work for the company, you work for the manager, or you run the industry. I've been fortunate where I've had kind of all of them trigger in different ways. I've had great managers who've enabled me to kind of get out there and really promote our services. I do love the industry without a doubt, and that's certainly kept me in my role. And then even within ACA, I've been able to almost promote our role within that structure.
Yeah.
I think honestly, and it's one of those things, and I'll probably say it a few times, during our conversation, but it's that ecosystem. That was the one thing that I underestimated about ETFs. It's the ecosystem that is so prominent and probably more tighter than any other industry within ETFs. And maybe that's what kept me.
Yeah. It's a cool industry, that's for sure. I kind of joked just a while ago about you guys being the gatekeepers of ETFs, but you definitely sit like you've got a bird's eye view of what's going on in the industry. You're kind of like right in the coalface. So like what are you kind of seeing going on in the ETF industry right now in terms of sort of like new entrants, kind of developments, and where do you kind of see it kind of going from here?
Yeah, so we, without a doubt,
there's so much going on, right?
Yeah, it's a lot going on, and we're fortunate. We probably have the most unique seat in the ETF industry. We're servicing over 1,000 ETFs across 250 managers in the U.S. Wow. We service all the different structures as well. So the majority of the white label turnkey platforms, we service them. So those firms that launch with them become clients. We service the mutual fund manager that launches ETFs. Yeah. And we service all of the innovative ones. So if you think about the most innovative ETFs that are out there, whether it's single stock or crypto, we service them as well. So without a doubt, it's ever changing. That's probably why we love the ETF industry. There's nobody, none of our clients are sitting on their hands or grass is not growing under their feet. Right now, being today, what is today? May 1st, 2025, ETF share class is without a doubt the hot topic of conversation. And so that's where we're spending a lot of our energy just to make sure everybody, we're getting our ducks in a row, and then we're watching the industry and we're speaking with the industry at the same time.
And on the share class point, because you're right, it is I would say the two hot topics are probably the share classes and private assets. But on the share class issue or topic, are you seeing interest from like existing kind of ETF managers or like asset managers who have a mutual fund book and an ETF book and looking to kind of like get some synergies there? Or is it predominantly from mutual fund managers who are looking to get into the ETF space and see this as kind of like a low-hanging fruit, easy entrance point?
Probably the former, and I'll explain why. So if you're a mutual fund manager looking to launch ETFs, you're not necessarily looking to just mimic a strategy into an ETF wrapper. You're looking to launch ETFs because you're launching a full suite of ETFs. Now that on top of that, Now there may be the discussion and the thought process surrounding ETF share class, but that's not slowing down, because the ETF, if you look at what's happening with ETF share classes, that's taking obviously the existing strategy and offering a ETF share class to that strategy.
Yeah.
The managers, some of these managers who are launching, these mutual fund managers launching ETFs, they're launching separate strategies. So you're seeing their desire to launch ETFs not necessarily being driven by the ETF share class. The only thing, maybe if you zoom out, it just means the popularity of ETFs is there.
Yeah.
Now, the former part of that, which is important, is the conversations we're having are with existing mutual fund managers who have ETFs. So existing large asset managers who are ETF issuers. They're looking at it because they already have a stable of ETFs that are very successful, but now they have to think about enabling the mutual fund structure into having an ETF share class. So that's where the left hand in the industry is talking to the right hand for the first time, and that's becoming very interesting.
Yeah. So, like, on the assumption that, like, the SEC approves the 50 odd sort of submissions or whatever it is right now, in the not too distant future, can you see a landscape in the not too distant future whereby basically everybody has like ETF share classes?
If when the share class gets approved and is available, there really isn't a reason why a mutual fund manager, in certain cases, wouldn't have that available. That's the benefit of the ETF. That's why we love the ETF industry, is because the benefit to the end investor. So if you have the ability for a mutual fund to enable it, it really should become that much easier. Now they have to. There are issues related to making sure that everything becomes available and how it becomes available. That's being ironed out in the industry. That's what we're doing in the background for our clients, and we're having conversations with our clients. But it really is, I think, an innovative success ultimately for the industry and for end investors.
Yeah. And what, like, the clients that are coming to you, what kind of questions are they asking about share classes?
Yeah, they're the general question anybody would ask, and that's how simple it is if you think about it. So if you are that type of manager, you're basically starting at square one. What does it look like? What does it mean on day one? How are you going to perform your service today, and if it's going to be different? And how now, when I go back to the ecosystem, which I talked about, with those law firms, custodians, administrators, we're all performing a role for the ETFs. We're being asked and challenged by our clients, which is good because that's what the structure is doing. How are we going to service this in one way or another? That's one question. The other is having it made available. So that's going to be an interesting aspect as well, because the way that ETFs operate, you and I could have a Schwab or Fidelity account and purchase the ETF. What does that look like now when you're purchasing a mutual fund with an ETF share class? So those are the questions that we're asking, the whole industry is asking as well. And so I think no question, every stone is being turned over and unturned.
Yeah.
Every question, the simplest questions are being asked.
Yeah. What about we kind of mentioned the private assets space? What are you seeing there?
It's a little bit's on the sideline for us because I think we're all watching one specific story related to it. It's interesting without a doubt. I think we're kind of wait and see. The way that we view it from our seat is, well, one, great for the ETF industry to see innovation. We love to see innovation, and we love to see that come to light. It's also interesting how it is coming there, and if it will provide ultimately what the end investor wants, which is a registered fund in a private asset to get access to private assets. The way that can be done today outside of the ETF industry, which we service, is interval funds. So if you see it right now, it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to watch the evolution of that. Sometimes we have alts managers, alternative asset managers, hedge fund managers, and the like. They'll come to us looking to launch an ETF, but due to the illiquid nature of their underlying holdings, they can't. And so then they pivot to maybe launch an interval fund. And in that particular case, they are able to provide that registered fund, which now means you can you get a ticker. It's more investor friendly, and so that's an avenue right now, which is actually growing quite a bit. But this and it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a wait and see on the ETF side. So I love innovation. But I think we're kind of mid book on the chapters there to see where it's going to end up.
You know, I was thinking this morning. I had like 3 ideas. So, what's the next big thing for ETFs? And I had active ETFs, share classes, and private assets. When I was thinking about it, active ETFs, it's not really the next big thing. It's like it's happening today. So, do you kind of see that boat has sailed now and it's established in the US, or is it still work in progress, would you say?
I think the idea of active ETFs is, we have a lot of clients and some are very recognizable who brought active ETFs to the light. I think when we help firms launch an ETF, it's an active ETF almost 10 times out of 10.
Wow.
They're not looking to launch any sort of passive type of product. And if they are, it's still very innovative in terms of how they're going to power it.
Right.
So yeah, active ETFs is definitely there. I agree with you. I wouldn't call it the next big thing at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, share class, without a doubt, that'll be one of the innovative aspects. And then we just have to wait and see on the private assets in ETFs.
Yeah. Interesting. When it kind of comes to, we're talking about innovation here, like ultimately nothing lasts forever, right? Everything there's always a bigger fish out there, right? So even though like ETFs are on this kind of great run at the moment, when you kind of look into your magic ball, what kind of like threats do you see on the horizon for the ETF industry and the ETF wrapper per se?
Yeah, it's funny. I don't want to say I don't see any threats, but if you look at ETFs specifically, you start to, sometimes we're a victim of this, and maybe that's part of my things to improve upon pausing. But if you pause, you'll see that we're sometimes a victim of just looking at the ETF industry in its own 4 walls. But again, if you zoom out in the entire industry, there are a lot more. There are tons of mutual funds. There are tons of other products. The runway for ETFs we're still, and just using US baseball terms, we're still in the initial innings of that aspect. So tons of runway there. And then just the other aspect related to it is just the amount of innovation that can still come to light that we still haven't seen, and that without a doubt will not slow.
Interesting. You're clearly a man who loves what he's doing, loves the ETF industry. But if you weren't doing what you would do now, what would you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny. I probably, it's something related to services with clients. I really love working with our clients. I love the challenges. I love the interaction. I love being able to solve for them and being that subject matter expert. So whatever industry has that, sometimes I joke, maybe it's you just throw me in that industry and I'll be probably doing the same exact thing. But without a doubt, it's our clients that, that interaction there that kind of keeps the blood flowing.
Got it. Perfect. Joe, thank you so much. This has been a real treat. Great having you on the show.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Great to see you.
Cool.